the first round of the NBA playoffs has come to a close, and now teams are moving on to the second round. Let me just start with the Miami Heat versus the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, that's the first seed matching up against the A seed in the East. And this series ended in 5 games. Miami Heat advanced the second round, beating the Atlanta Hawks in 5 games. So honestly, the defense that the Miami Heat just brought about to the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young's Atlanta Hawks, just couldn't match it. They were also missing the productivity of Clint Capella, and they couldn't get inside. So Miami Heat in 5. I mean, it was just a quick series. I never expected anything different, or anything to go differently. Actually, at some point, I actually looked at a sweep, but the Atlanta Hawks just stole a game, and it ended in 5. So Miami Heat in 5 is a 1 seed. Moving on swiftly, Sixers versus Raptors. Man, the Sixers just went up 3-0. Actually, was shocked in Game 4 where the Sixers were not able to close out the Toronto Raptors, which was sad because I was looking at a situation where Doc Rivers could have potentially blew an 0-3 lead, but that was not going to happen. You're having a guy like Joel Embiid, James Harden, Danny Green, Tyrese Maxey, all those guys, Shake Milton. Matisse Thybulle wasn't able to play, but they had the COVID restrictions with the Toronto Raptors arena. So, but they were able to beat the Toronto Raptors in 6 games. But although I thought that the Sixers had what it took to beat the Toronto Raptors in 5 games, I don't know why it stretched out to 6 games. But hey, they moved on to the next round as the 4th seed. And moving on, we had the Bucks versus Bulls. This was a no-brainer. If anyone was picking the Bulls to win this series, man, you're mistaken. Because the Bulls, this was actually a series where they didn't even win any home game. They stole a game in Game 2 when Chris Middleton went down with that, gruesome injury where he's ruled out for the next round where they're matching up with the Celtics. But I believe Giannis just did what he had to do to, wheel that team past the first round. So the Bulls had no chance. DeMar DeRozan couldn't do it alone, and or even when you say that okay, Lonzo Ball didn't play, was out with an injury. I mean, that wasn't an excuse. So Bucks in 5, they beat them in quick successive fashion. I was expecting anything different, but the only sweep that was recorded was the Celtics versus Nets. Honestly, I expected this series to go at least 6 to 7 games, but the Boston Celtics just came in and put their hammer down, on Kyrie and KD. Kyrie just became one of the most disappointing sports figures in Nets history, as a guy who, he didn't take the vaccine. He was out for quite a while in that series. Quite a while in the season. In the series, he showed out. It was Ramadan Kyrie. He dropped a few career highs in the regular season, but in the postseason, the Nets was not just not ready for the defense the Celtics had, because the Celtics were the record #1 defense in the league. So it was actually pretty tough for them. So the Nets got swept. I was honestly expecting 6 to 7 games, but the firepower and the competitiveness that the Celtics showed, I mean, it was just different. And they made Jason Tatum and crew, Marcus Smart, one of the defensive players, they were able to shut down not Jason Tatum. They were able to shut down Kevin Durant's offense, and it's nothing that we have ever seen before. So they moved on to the second round, and this is the only sweep in the first round. I mean, if the Nets got swept, I mean, teams like Denver Nuggets never got swept. In the West, games ended in 6 games. Only one game ended in Game 5, which is the Golden State Warriors versus the Denver Nuggets. But I mean, the Nets just getting swept, it was somewhat, you can say, satisfying to other people, especially Celtics fans, because the antics that Kyrie had, during the regular season, and also during, the postseason for last year, where, Kyrie went and stomped on that logo, the Leprechaun logo, center court. He's still salty with the Celtics, and the Celtics were salty with him, so that's why they swept them. They got them out there quickly, painlessly, and it's the only sweep. Then moving on to the West, we have the Suns versus the Pelicans. Honestly, I never expected the Pelicans to pull off a lot of fight in this series, but they did. They pushed the Suns to 6 games. The Suns eventually won this series. This was expected because they were the number 1 seed, and there was no answer. There was no answer for CP3, especially with Devin Booker, missing a few games in that series. So the Suns just came in and did their thing. The thing that worked well during the regular season, they applied it here and it worked. Moving on to the next series, I mean, it's just crazy. Mavs versus Jazz. So the Jazz got knocked out in the first round in 6 games by the Mavericks. Mind you, Luka Doncic didn't play half of this series. And guys like Jalen Brunson just came in, had career nights, especially in Game 2 and Game 3. And I mean, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, that pairing, honestly, in the offseason, I'm not sure if they're going to, keep that pair, but, they're owed a lot of money. So best bet is they're going to run it back again, but try to retool again. But the Jazz are just disappointing. Actually, this is a franchise that you don't have any expectations for them. And unfortunately, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So they got beat by the Mavs, and the Mavs are on to the second round. The Jazz gave the Mavs their first playoff win since 2011. So you can see, even as a 1 seed, Jazz last season they were not able to handle their business against the Clippers despite leading 3-2. They blew it, and now they blew it in the first round. And also remember in 2020 they blew a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets. So yeah, I mean, the Jazz will always disappoint you every step of the season, and in every game, especially in the playoffs. Just expect disappointment if you're a Jazz fan. So that's one thing I have to say about that. Moving on to the Golden State Warriors versus the Denver Nuggets. Honestly, Jokic is great, but without his two superstars in Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., it's a moot point. Those three guys, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Jamal Murray, were instrumental in coming back down from 3-1 twice in a postseason, and pushing the Lakers to 5 games. But the Lakers had more firepower, so they won that series. And the Jazz. No, not the Jazz. The Denver Nuggets, they were able to steal Game 4 to avoid a sweep, but the series ended in 5 games in the Warriors' favor. So the Warriors in 5. And last but not least, we have the Wolves versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Honestly, the Minnesota Timberwolves were supposed to force a Game 7, but they lost at home to the Memphis Grizzlies, the grit and grind Memphis Grizzlies. So they were not able to, win that game to force a Game 7. So the Memphis Grizzlies are on to the second round. And looking at the conference semis, starting from the East, you can see the Miami Heat are matching up with the Philadelphia 76ers. This is going to be interesting, especially with recent development, having Joel Embiid having a slight injury, and I'm not sure. He's being ruled out indefinitely, so I don't know how the Sixers are going to handle missing their leading scorer in the league, and also a defensive presence. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. If they've got the Bucks and Celtics, the Bucks are missing the productivity of Chris Middleton, so it's going to be actually very interesting to see how far Giannis is going to take this Bucks team to in the playoffs. And I just can't wait to see these East matchups because they're just going to be very interesting. And moving on to the West, we have the Suns, Mavs. Okay, I'm going to give the nod to the Suns because even without their superstars, they're able to produce wins. Even without Devin Booker being 100%, the CP3 is enough to handle a Mavs team. So yeah, only his productivity is just legendary, especially being the point guard, pass fast, traditional true point guard. He can do this. So yeah, I mean, there's no way the Suns are going to blow this series with the Mavs. But moving on to the Grizzlies versus Warriors, I'll just give the slight edge. I'll just give the Warriors this series. If it's a sweep, well and good. If it's going to go 5 to 6 games, but it's the Warriors who are coming out of this series. I'm just calling it now. You heard it here first. So I expect the Suns to make the West Finals. I expect the Warriors to make the West Finals. In the East, it's kind of tricky because I don't know how these teams are going to look, especially the Sixers and the Bucks missing one of their star players. So it's just going to be tough to see that. But overall, it's been a good first round. We've been treated to one sweep brought to you by the Nets, which was expected because, they have been horrendous, very horrendous. But I mean, what can you say on the team? Has a selfish player in a Kyrie Irving and a Ben Simmons. What do you expect? A sweep. So there's nothing more to say about that, and there's nothing to be surprised when you see a team having a player like a Ben Simmons, wet the bed. He just refused to play. He was supposed to play in Game 4, but he didn't play, so they got swept. So I'm just waiting to see these conference semis, and it's just going to be fun to see what teams are going to make it to the conference finals, and you know, out of that, you're going to have two teams representing each conference to see who's going to win it all. So it's going to be fun. So yeah, man, I'm out. Peace.